we're going to do right here. One of the things that I think it's important we talk about, and we can kind of carry this in to a lot of other No Prep Kings specific conversations. We can't have the race master of No Prep Kings on here and not talk about some of the controversies that we've seen, not, since its initial launch, but throughout the course of the last few weeks. Specifically, a couple of weeks ago, we had Stevie Fast Jackson and Justin Swanstrom going back and forth, videos getting made, the radial tire guys up in arms, the no prep guys up in arms. A great moment for drag racing again. Then last week, I believe it was, you got Donald Long, one of drag racing's most celebrated promoters, founder of the Duck X Productions, puts on No Mercy, lights out the Sweet 16, did a bunch of great races during a really damaged COVID season, saying that No Prep King racers are charging for autographs and stirring up controversy. And then this last weekend, we had this whole starting line drama where, it's been a wild situation to say the least. And I don't know that I even fully understand the ins and outs of it, but I'm just curious. Can you kind of take us through that moment last weekend? I believe there was a gentleman's agreement not to guess the light. One guy guessed the light, Jerry Bird. He lives up to his agreement with Kai Kelly, the eventual race winner, I believe, correct, and skips the scales because he wants to honor his word. There was a lot of talk that this instantly brought into question the integrity of the competition that exists within No Prep Kings. I'm not here to make a big, bold statement, but I know a lot of you guys fairly well. I have a great relationship with people like Pat Musey and Justin Swanstrom, and all the reports that I ever get is like, hey, man, don't be fooled. This is real deal drag racing. There's no gimmies. It's not like that. Can you just kind of take us through that situation and let us know, kind of clear some of that up?
Yeah, sure. First and foremost, that situation right there is the beauty of No Prep Kings, right? We allow the racers, you're allowed to make your own decision, right? When it comes to racing, and that decision that Jerry made was up to Jerry. He made it. They had a strategy. He did what he had to do, right? And that's what makes this show great, because we're going to show you all the ins and outs of that decision and what the implications were and the discussions about that decision. Like, we're behind the scenes on everything that goes on. And, I like to, when I was listening to Matt Hagan's interview, he talked about when John Forrest walked up and was kind of poking him in the chest. That right there, if that happened in, say, No Prep Kings, you would have saw that. You would have saw that whole interaction, that exchange. And that is what sets No Prep Kings at a different level, I think, than NHRA. It reveals everything.
I think it's important, to your point, man. Like, those moments, I believe, need to be celebrated. And I don't mean to play devil's advocate here, but my immediate reaction, and I've heard a lot of this, like, I've been getting texts about it, like, oh, they finally showed their hand. This is all made up. It's a soap opera, blah, blah, blah. But what I kind of find to be interesting and worth talking about is that 2 weeks ago, the entire drag racing world is up in arms that the NHRA was so stuck in their decision-making process and so committed to, like, the integrity of the sport and the rules and all this, that they robbed us of what could have been the most epic pro stock first round that we've maybe seen in 20 years, right? The whole drag racing world was up in arms that the NHRA didn't bend in that moment when it made sense to bend. Man, it made sense to bend. Let these guys race. They've been sitting in the pre-stage beams for 4 minutes.
What a story.
What a story.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But competition rules and integrity and the starter took over. And I understand that perspective, but we can't have it both ways, guys. We can't want to see these awesome, exciting moments unfold, but then lose our minds when they happen because someone knew that, hey, this is what the story needed, right? The guy said he was going to DQ himself if they jumped. He did it.
Yeah, and this is not the first time there's been controversy in drag racing. There's always going to be controversy in drag racing.
Yes,
That's, sir. You know what I mean? So, but like I said, we will show every part of that. You're going to see it, and that's just what sets it aside. That's what sets it apart.
I'm curious, is there a lot of prior thought put into, or what do you say, training, I think might be a good word, that the Pilgrim Studios or Discovery or the people that are involved with the actual production of the show, do they kind of talk to the cast and characters? Because that was something I was hearing from Matt. We were running low on time, so I didn't dive into it, and I kind of regret it now, because sometimes I wonder if the NHRA wouldn't it be wise to be like, hey, let's train these guys up and tell them like, hey man, let it all hang out. Tell us how you feel. Say what you think. Don't hold back. Don't just thank your sponsors.
Yeah.
Do those conversations happen inside of No Prep Kings?
I mean, it's not conversations direct like that, but we all know that we're on, this is a TV show. So, the producers are like, hey, do what you want to do. If you want to be boring, be boring. You know what I mean? We don't have to show you. So you're kind of, it's kind of in your own hands on the character you want to portray. I mean, you want to be the boring guy, or you want to be the guy that talks a lot of crap and is trying to fist fight people or whatever. Like, which way do you want to go? I can tell you that Pilgrim doesn't say, hey, Bobby, it's now time for you to punch someone in the face. Like, they don't do any of that. You know what I mean? That's all, that's all on Bobby. So, and that's one of the things that some people like to say, you know what I mean? That it's scripted or whatever. And it's nothing like that at all.
Yeah, I don't think it's about, like, I've never ever felt it was scripted, but I have had moments where I looked at it and I go, man, are these guys just that smart? Like, and I know people are going to get mad at me for saying that because I sound like a blowhard or like I'm blowing smoke or whatever because you're on here. But like, I see it all the time. John Force is another great example. He took it upon himself to put himself out there and be that guy.
Yeah.
At some point in his career, he recognized, man, I better do something different. I better find a way to stand out.
Set your side apart. Yes. Set yourself apart. Yeah.
And I see this whole group of people, and you're here telling us that no one's demanding that they do this. Nobody's scripting this behavior. So that just tells me that, man, these are guys that understand the way of the world in 2021, man. I mean, we've been trained by Kim Kardashian and Kanye West, all these other kind of like reality people and these people that show every aspect of their life. Man, that's what we expect in 2021. And I think the NHRA, and this isn't a negative thing, but a lot of traditional drag racing platforms are just kind of stuck in a different era.
Yeah. Yeah, they are, man. And people look at, altercations that happen in the drag strip and they're just like, oh my God, what's going on? But that's the entertainment factor, right? That is what grabs the people. People talk about that stuff for seasons to come, right? I mean, use the example of John Force. Everyone knows his name and it's for a reason, right? I mean, he doesn't fall into the crowd. You can pick him out at first glance. I mean, but that's how he's built his character up. So he did a great job.
I couldn't agree more, man. When you look at the sport right now, one of the things I find is interesting is that we had Mike Murillo on here last week. We had some technical difficulties and didn't get to hear everything he had to say. But I'm paraphrasing, but what he kind of started with was, man, he doesn't really hate on any of these other, hey, I like all this stuff. Let everybody do what they want to do. You just said it here, different strokes for different folks. No Prep Kings might not be for everybody. It's clearly for a lot of people, but but on the flip side, it seems like the people from within traditional drag racing are much more feisty towards the No Prep Kings guys than vice versa. So I guess I just want to hear, like, I've seen you at NMCA events, Chris. I've seen you at Donald Long's events. I've seen you at various events down throughout Texas. Now that we're in the same part of the country, who'd ever thought that would be the case? But like, is that correct that when you look around the sport, you don't see enemies or you don't see classes that you don't like necessarily?
No, of course not. I mean, I like all forms of drag racing. I'm an NHRA fan. I like watching it. I like watching radio races. I love Donald Long's events. Like, man, I just like anything fast. And I think you're going to find that with most of the guys that race No Prep Kings. Like, they don't hate on any of the other events, as far as they don't dislike them just because it's NHRA. You know what I mean? We all enjoy fast things. I'm pretty much all of us share that same, common thing, that we enjoy fast stuff and stuff that hauls ass.
I'm curious, what do you think is next for No Prep Kings, right? I mean, is it just the continuation of what's going on, or do you have visions, or do you see that? Where do you see this going from here, right? We've got, how many races did you guys, or will you do in 2021?
So it'll be 15 total races for 2021. We just added 2 more.
Yes.
The month of October is going to be crazy, but that'll finish up our 2021 schedule. So 15 races for the year, but the plan is to move forward, add more events, nurture new talent as well. I mean, that's also big on the list, because like we've had the discussion, like what Matt Hagan was saying, you can't rely on, one star forever, right? So we're constantly trying to nurture new talent and see who's going to rise to the top, So that's the plan, at least for No Prep Kings, is to continue on, have more events, more money, and just get faster and faster.
What do you make of, there's a lot of talk and kind of curiosity around the process of getting involved with the No Prep Kings show. So say that I'm a big tire, steel roof and quarters, pro mod style car, on the lines of any of these guys that we're seeing running at the front of No Prep Kings right now. What's the process look like for me to get involved with the show?
Yeah, so I mean, there's several classes that are at No Prep Kings events. Obviously, the invitational class is the big event, right? 40,000 to win. That's the one that everyone wants to strive to be to. I mean, you've got 32 drivers out of the entire United States, right? Get to participate in that. So it's like the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, and so on and so forth, right? So what I could say in my recommendation for Wes Buck with his Pro Mod or steel roof, steel recorder car, if you wanted to come participate, I would tell you, Wes, come to one of the events, run Outlaw Big Tire, and figure out a way to set yourself apart. Stand out. You have to stand out, right? I mean, and I can't tell you how you do that. But that's, the first step is going to the event. There's open classes for you to run. Not every class is invitational. Everyone's invited to the open classes we have. I mean, Stevie Fast could come run Outlaw Big Tire if he wanted to. Come on in. We're welcome with open arms, man. Come race. But you show up and you stand out.
I think it's an incredible thing, man, and I see people doing it. I mean, I look at Lyle Barnett put his small tire car in the winner's circle recently. I believe that was in Darlington.
Yep.
The upcoming event is out on the West Coast, and I know there's a whole bunch of small tire guys that are like over the moon to just go throw their hat in the ring and be there and be guilty by association. Is that rewarding for you? And kind of speaking on behalf of the whole Street Outlaws crew, it has to be cool to be the ultimate popular clique. That group of people, those 32 invitational spots, that's really become a real. Matt Hagan talked about winning a Wally. I think that being in that 32 car invitational is encroaching on that kind of status where, hey, you're somebody. Does it make you feel like a proud papa? Does it make your heart swell with pride to see what this has become and people's desire to be a part of it?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I feel, privileged to even be a part of it and be in the position I'm in. And you know what? The rest of those 32 guys should feel the exact same. It's definitely a privilege in my opinion, because you have got thousands of people that want to be in your shoes right then and there. You know what I mean? And there's people knocking on the door ready to replace you at any time. So, for me personally, I am just beside myself that I get to even be a part of it. Don't get me wrong, the days are really long, but just the satisfaction of making it all the way to the end and then handing over, 40 grand and hand over this big trophy that's only one of one for that event. I mean,
right.
It's just, I don't know, man. I get kind of excited just talking about it, but it's just, it's hard to put into words. It's just something very unique that you would have to experience.
When you look at like big tire performance, small tire, and obviously all this stuff happens without the scoreboards on, win lights only, instant green start. If I believe that's correct, right?
Right.
I'm curious, what is how much does it mean to you to see, or excuse me, I guess that's not the right question. What I want to ask is, how surprised are you by the performance of these cars when you burst onto the scene with your car, which I believe the yellow Mustang, when it first came on the scene, had like maybe a 28 10.5 on it, like a real 10.5.
Yeah.
What are you blown away? I don't know what that car ran back then. I'm assuming somewhere in the 5s in the 8th mile. Now these cars are well down in the mid 4s or faster. Are you stunned by this on an unprepped surface that these cars have gotten so fast?
Yeah, I mean, I can't, I don't know exactly how fast the cars go, but I can tell you just by gauging, because we can gauge within a tenth or two how fast cars are going, and I can tell you they are hauling balls down a no prep track, man. Anyone that says that they will put 5/10 on any of these cars at the top are out in outer space. It's not happening on a no prep. I'm sorry, it's just not. Because these guys are flying.
It's been crazy to watch, to be honest, because I'm going, knowing what these cars run like in other instances or whatever, to see them come close to replicating those performances on no prep surfaces is really impressive. I don't want to dive too deep into this and go like all technical, but talking about the big tire cars, and you have an intense knowledge of all this stuff, is it a matter of like, if somebody's coming off a prepped track and they show up to try to run no prep, is it about putting a ton of bite in it, like with the 4-link? Is it a really long bar? Is it, because it looks to me like it's going to require some wholesale changes to really be competitive.
Yeah, for sure. But it's also going to depend on the track. I mean, we go to the tracks all across the nation, and a good example would be the Darlington surface versus maybe Tucson, right? And they're two completely different surfaces. One, you have a sand pit or sand all around you, and all it takes is one person to drive through the sand, and then it goes all over the track. So now you're sand racing down this surface, right? And so, we're not going to drag it or spray any glue. So it just kind of is what it is. And then, of course, you've got Darlington, right, which is a really smooth, nice surface. I mean, radial guys fly on that surface. So, I think you have to be ready when you show up to have your different bar angles. Like if you're on a Tucson surface, which isn't, has sand and stuff, you might run something more similar to what you would run on the street, right? A little more bite or so on and so forth. Whereas, you get on like a Darlington surface, and if you still have that setup that has a lot of bite, you're probably going to rattle your teeth out, and probably you're going to dump pieces of your car all over the track from tire shake. You know what I mean? So you got to make sure you really have your setups easily changeable depending on what track you go to.
Good information, because I do think that there's a belief that you can show up with one of these cars and be pretty close pretty quick. And I just don't see that being the case. Last question, Boosted, and we will let you go, man. Does the success of all this stuff, and I don't mean to get you in trouble and put you in a precarious situation, but I am curious, with all the success of Street Outlaws, No Prep Kings, does this mean like real street racing for most of these guys is way in the past?
I don't think so. Well, I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but I mean, I can speak for me. I mean, I may or may not have entered a little event a month or so ago in my yellow car. You know what I mean? And I know there's guys that will still do it. I know Dave will still do it. Joe Woods will still do it. There's several guys that will still put their cars out there and race. They don't care. They're street racers at heart. They've been doing it for their whole life, right? So they're not going to let this stuff deter them. They'll do it.
It's like what Big Chief always say, like, hey, if you're street, you're street. Like you can't stop doing that. I actually had a kind of an unfortunate, a really odd conversation with my chiropractor last week. He was asking me about street. He's like, didn't you used to street race? And I'm like, man, it's not something that I can really talk about with a lot of pride or anything, because of my role as an ambassador for the sport of drag racing here and now. But we'd be lying. I mean, drag racing was born on streets. That's where so much of this stuff started. I mean, it's impossible, and I'm not encouraging it or supporting it in any way, shape, or form. However, I'm here to tell you that atmosphere is unlike any other, and I think it's interesting that there are events that are coming close to recreating that. Closing thoughts on these races that are happening on the shutdown. You guys, I don't know that everybody knows this, but your group, the 405, I believe, invented this style of racing I believe at Thunder Valley, back up toward the starting line. We ran a story in the magazine, took a bunch of flack for it, but I thought it was fantastic. This was organized by you, Big Chief, Murder Nova, etc. What do you make of it right now? I mean, are you surprised at all? Because it seems like it's coming on strong and not going anywhere.
Yeah, there's been several events, and they're actually big money events. Crazy, like backwards track. Like, oh my God, I look at it, I'm like, how are they getting this money together? But anyways, it's these big money backwards track events are still there, and you're right. It all started way back in Thunder Valley with Big Mark and those guys, and it was just a new thing for us. It's like, all right, this is pretty cool. It's really slick down here, and we're not on the street, so that kind of sucks, but we're trying to mimic it. This is actually pretty cool. I think we'll continue doing it. And, the guys that are doing it now, I mean, it's very successful. And it really is a suspension tuner's race at that point, because, and power management as well. Because I'm going to tell you, at the end of the track, that surface sucks.
That's rough down there, man. There's not a track in the country that I think is really an ideal place to go racing in their shutdown, man.
It's terrible.
It's cool to see it. I don't know that it completely recreates the environment. I mean, obviously not. You don't have that element of danger and that suspense and that kind of tension in the air. However, it comes pretty close. Dimly lit. They're almost all at night, late at night, right? People crowded down around the water box or whatever. It's a cool thing. And I tip my cap, because, I mean, we've got a situation I think is probably near and dear to your heart. I mean, the state of Texas is about to lose Houston Raceway Park, one of the best known quarter-mile drag strips in the country, a really beloved venue for our sport. And I thought about that from the perspective of illegal street racing. And they are going to have a problem on their hands in a big way, in my opinion, because it's going to hurt. I mean, there are going to be people that are going to be looking for places to race their car, don't want to go to the 8th mile track, don't want to drive to Dallas or whatever. And I just kind of wonder, we're going to see more and more and more of this stuff. And I tip my cap to the Tucson Dragways and to Darlington and Shadyside and all these tracks that are going, you know what? We're actually providing a service in a lot of ways to give these racers an opportunity to do what they like to do in the environment they like to do it, but not on a public roadway.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. I mean, it's almost like it's like the in-between of street and track. You know what I mean? You're still at the track, so you've got the walls and stuff like that, but also, you know, it's very sketchy down there. So, you know, for guys that don't want to put it on the street, and by all means, I don't look down on people that won't do it. I mean, that's your choice. You're welcome to do whatever you want to do. But this is a place where they can, you know, I guess, mimic the street conditions and see how fast they can go down in a safe environment.
It's been cool to see, man, and we appreciate it a lot. Last thing, I lied to you 3 times now.
It's okay.
What kind of feedback do you get from track owner and operators? Because we just had a great comment here on YouTube, just on any thoughts on some of these tracks that are on the verge of closing and whatnot. But what I really want to ask is, how good does it feel? Because a lot of these tracks historically, the only real big events they had were like if they were lucky enough to get an NHRA national event, or if they had like a big 4th of July deal or something like that. But now you got tracks all over the country clamoring for their NPK date. I mean, what's that feel like for you guys, for the whole group? And what kind of feedback do you get from track owner operators when you're there packing their facility with, in many cases, fans that have never been to a drag race before?
Right. Well, first off, I think, you know, these track owners see the success of the No Prep Kings events. I mean, the pictures speak for themselves, right? I mean, I'm sure you see it after every event. There's not an empty seat in the stands. And so track owners see this and they're like, you know, their eyes get all big and they're like, man, this is really a successful thing. We want to have them here. We want our fans, our people that live close to our track to be able to come experience this. So, and I can tell you how it makes me feel standing on the starting line and looking up and just being like, oh my gosh, there's so many people here. And then they stick a microphone in my hand. They're like, all right, talk to them. I'm like, oh, okay, no problem. So then I got to talk to the 10s, 15s, however many thousands of people are there in the stands. And I can tell you the people that are there are just overly excited to be just a part and see it in person. I mean, seeing it on TV and seeing it in person are two, you know, totally different things. And we give the avenue for the fans to be able to do that. And they're overly appreciative.
Well, man, Chris, we appreciate you. Excuse me, Boosted. We got to go by nicknames in this day and age.
It's all good. You can call me Chris. You can call me Chris. It's fine.
Well, we appreciate your time, man. Thank you a lot. Go take care of the little man. I know you just picked him up from school, and we hate to derail your afternoon, but we are eternally grateful for you being a part of this, man, sharing some knowledge with us and giving us some unfiltered commentary. So thank you so much, Chris. I look forward to seeing you soon. I do plan on going to the No Prep Kings that's coming up in Ennis in October at the legendary Motorplex here in Dallas, outside of Dallas. So I look forward to seeing you before the year is out, and hopefully our paths cross again soon. Thank you so much, and thanks for watching.